Huge validation for LSU in 2025. We'll tell you where it came from next. It's Locked on LSU. Here we go.
You are Locked on LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked on LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks so much for making us your first listen. We are free, available wherever you get great podcasts, of course, on YouTube as well. So please subscribe as always. One of the fastest ways to help us grow is by leaving your comments below. So thank you sincerely for that. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. I'm going to start today's episode by giving you the punchline first. And that's not in this profession generally how it's supposed to go. You're supposed to tease them and drag them along and make them stay and increase time spent listening and all that stuff. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to give you the punchline because I believe in giving you the punchline, that's going to be interesting enough to you to stay for this entire episode. Pro Football Focus rated LSU as the number one quarterback room in all of college football for 2025. That's the punchline. That is amazing validation from a third party independent of our purple and gold bubble. And I'm going to tell you why I think that is so significant. You're going to hear from Joe Sloan in this episode talking about Garrett Nussmeier, about the quarterbacks, the offense as a whole, and I'm going to wrap a big bow around it. But I want to start on why I think it is so important to point out the PFF grade or rating. It is my contention right now that nationally people are sleeping on LSU. And I know if you're not an LSU fan, you've stumbled upon this, you're probably going to look at this and go, great, the purple and gold sunshine pumper saying everybody's sleeping on his team. And I get that because that very commonly happens in media. A lot of media, very honestly, is infiltrated with fanboys. That's the reality. It's a lot of fans posing as media that don't actually look at things objectively. And sometimes audiences want affirmation, not information. They want to be told what they want to hear. I believe I've been good at what I do for a very long time because I don't tell people what they want to hear. I tell people the truth. I tell people what I think. And sometimes it's that I think the team's going to be great. And sometimes I think they're going to stink. And when that's the case, I tell you. And sometimes LSU fans don't love that about me, but I don't really care. My job is to give you honest opinions and let you decide the rest. My opinion on this LSU team is that they are in the same category that Ohio State and Ole Miss were a year ago. They are teams that had great returning veterans and went and spent a buttload of money in the transfer portal to build the best roster money can buy. And you saw two very different results. Ohio State won the national championship. Ole Miss went 9-3. Now, I will remind you that Ohio State went 10-2. Ohio State lost 2 games. They just got hot at the right time. But those were the two most talented rosters in college football last year. I think LSU is in that same category this year. And I think mostly nationally, people don't, and this isn't a criticism, I think this is just an observation. You don't typically see deep dives into every 134 FBS team in May. By the time you get to media days in July and through camps in August, you start to get deeper dives into rosters and who's returning and what the weaknesses are and all that sort of stuff. But right now, a lot of times when you're national, you cover the surface level. You know a little bit about a lot of teams. Someone like me, I know a lot about one team, LSU. And nationally, the narratives about LSU are Brian Kelly can't win the big one. LSU lost 4 games a year ago. They had Jaden Daniels, Brian Thomas, Malik Neighbors, still managed to lose 3 games in that one. Even when Brian Kelly showed up, they ended up going on that 3-game losing streak at the end of the season. After they beat Alabama, they lost to Texas A&M, who was a putrid football team. They got blown out by Georgia, lost the bowl game. Like, all those things, I get it. Actually, they won that bowl game. So I understand why, if you're just looking surface level, why you're not going to believe in LSU. And then I saw this PFF ranking that listed the top 10 quarterback rooms in college football for 2025 and had LSU number 1. And I went, isn't that interesting? You see, PFF isn't subjective human opinion. PFF is an objective metric. And I say it all the time about PFF. It's just a metric. It's not the metric. It's just something to consider. But it is credible, and it's something a lot of people lean into. And they had LSU as the number 1 quarterback room in the country for 2025. And you want to know what else was validating? Number 2, SMU. Number 3, Arizona State. Number 4, by the way, Florida. Alabama made the list stunningly at 9. Ohio State was there at 10. You know who wasn't in the top 10? Texas. Despite all the Arch Manning hype, PFF can look at Texas was honorable mention, but they can look at that and go, what's he done? Started 2 games against non-conference opponents, and their backups have no experience. Makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? Not when you're caught in the sports media echo chamber, because everything is Arch Manning, Texas, Sark, everything. This was so validating. Bill Conley over at ESPN put out his preseason updated rankings. He had Alabama number 2 in the country. And I look at that and I go, why? That's a team that lost 4 games a year ago, lost 2 games as a 3-touchdown favorite, 1 at Vanderbilt, 1 against Oklahoma, and lost to a 6-6 Michigan team in the bowl game. Why does Kalen DeBoer deserve the benefit of the doubt? Because he had a good season at Washington, where they won a bunch of close games with Michael Penix. By the way, they were on the ropes against Washington State in the Apple Cup. They were dead to rights against Oregon. They blew a massive lead in the Sugar Bowl against Texas and survived. Kalen DeBoer doesn't deserve the benefit of the doubt. And you're losing Jalen Milroe and yet Ty Simpson at quarterback. Tell me why anybody should believe in Alabama except for the logo. PFF didn't put this ranking together because of the logo. They looked at objective data and said, Garrett Nussmeier is the leading returning passer in all of college football. Oh, by the way, at a place that's had 2 Heisman winners in the last 6 years. And Nussmeier, in his first year starting at LSU, was better than Burrow in his first year and Daniels in his first year. Fact. I'll take impartial analytics ranking the quarterback rooms over somebody's subjective opinion. I'm going to tell you this. Vegas has LSU. Odds makers have LSU over or under 8.5. And you may look at that and say, but Matt, that's an impartial, objective viewpoint. That's true. But know what the odds makers' role is. They are trying to get equal action on both sides of a line. People who think LSU will win 8 games or 9 games. I'm just here to tell you, LSU went and bought the best roster you can buy. They got the best returning quarterback in college football. They are loaded with talent on both sides of the ball at every single level. They got the winningest active coach in college football. You have Blake Baker in his 2nd year. You've got Whitweeks back from injury, Harold Perkins back from injury. You went and added 2 dudes in the spring transfer portal that are plug-and-play starters at defensive tackle and at safety. I'm here to tell you, even people are going to look at LSU's schedule and say, oh, it's so tough. Every SEC schedule is tough. But I'm also here to tell you, if you're going to hype DJ Lagway and Lenora Sellers, guess what? LSU gets both of those games at home, and they get a bye before they play South Carolina. When they go play Ole Miss, they play Southeastern Louisiana the week before they play Ole Miss. When they play Alabama on the road, they get a bye before that game. When they play Oklahoma on the road, they get Western Kentucky before they play that game. They don't play a single stretch in the schedule where they play back-to-back road conference games. The draw is good. The talent is there. You're settled at quarterback and head coach and your whole staff. It's time, and the time will come. All this to say, the time will come that nationally people are going, man, we really didn't realize what LSU did. See, you and me, talked about LSU all throughout since December with the portal. We talked about it every day. Nationally, they don't know who Jamari Butler is. They don't know who Mansour Delane is. You know the name because we talk about it every day. They may know about Nick Anderson, but they don't know about Bauer Sharp and why that's significant. You do. But they'll know soon enough. Hammer the over 8.5. It's an embarrassingly low number. I'm going to say this again. I've said it all off season. The basement expectation for LSU, the floor is 10-2. If they don't go 10-2 and make the playoff, it is a cataclysmic failure of a season, given what they've invested. It would be equivalent to what Ole Miss was a season ago, given what with their fifth-year senior quarterback returning, their head coach returning, all they spent in the portal, and they went 9-3. They threw up on themselves against the Kentucky team that finished 1-7 in the league. They lost at LSU in a game where they didn't trail until the final score in overtime. And they lost at Florida in a game where they had 3 possessions inside the red zone and 3 times went forward on 4th down, passing on points, and lost the game because of it. They threw up on themselves. It would be, if this team does not make the playoff, a cataclysmic failure of a season. Joe Sloan is going to be a big part of getting this offense going in the right direction this year. You'll hear from him next. Locked on LSU, your team every day. You ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, plan long-term goals, and managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, you can set goals, you can stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. So I am bullish on LSU in 2025. I wasn't necessarily bullish on the team in 2024, but I am bullish on them in 2025. And what they have coming back and what they have coming in is a gigantic part of that. Now, Joe Sloan is tasked with using all the toys in the chest to make beautiful music offensively. And Sloan stopped by off the bench with Jacob Hester on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge Thursday, and they covered a lot of ground. And I want to highlight what he said about Nussmeier and what he said about the running game, but I want to start with the one word he used to describe what LSU's offense, what the identity of LSU's offense will be in 2025.
We're definitely a fast offense. We have speed all over the field. And I think
it would probably help if I unmuted it. My apologies.
Important thing will be is to be able to use that to our advantage to create, misdirection and create issues for the defense. And I think that's where we're going to start. I think what we've done a good job of, and really with Tradez and Bauer and those guys, is having the ability to create some different formations and do some different things and some of the different pieces on offense to use in multiple ways to get different looks to the defense. And I think our guys have really bought into that to be able to add, to maybe some of the things that we've already been doing, which I think will be really exciting.
I want to play the beginning of that again for you because we missed the beginning.
We're definitely a fast offense. We have speed all over the field.
We're a fast offense. We have speed all over the field. And you heard him also talk about the many different ways they're going to utilize a lot of that with misdirection, with personnel groupings. I'm going to remember that. So I'm going to come back to that in our final segment, but I don't want to lose sight of the quarterback conversation, which we're having right now, which was the genesis of all this. But I'm going to come back to that. Remember what he said. Misdirection, formations. Okay, we're going to get to that in just a second. But he also talked about the quarterbacks, in particular, Garrett Nussmeier and what he had to do to be relevant in year one.
He was as prepared as he could be and had developed as much as he could possibly develop in order to be prepared to play. And then there's experience and development you have to get from play, right? And there's some situations that happened in the season that now he's aware of how those things transpired, within the way he plays the game. And then practicing and preparing year-round to make sure you can avoid some of the negatives, right, and highlight your strengths. And I think that's what he's doing.
It's so true that there's no substitute for experience, getting out there and playing. Nuss had been around for a long time, but it's why playing that bowl game against Wisconsin 2 years ago was so imperative. Just to get him on the field, to see it, to lead the game-winning drive, all that stuff. We saw it. That was validating for a lot of people. And obviously to go through for 4,000 yards his first year as a starter was huge as well. Now, what do you do from year one to year two to improve?
He's been able to really watch and dive into every bit of his film from the last year, and now take that into spring with having a really good plan on exactly what he wanted to improve on and what we wanted him to improve on in all the different facets of what we do. And I think that's what, when you watch him really from January up until spring ball, that's what he did. And then we were able to kind of reset during spring ball and say, okay, this is what's really getting better. This is what, okay, we need to adjust and maybe shift our focus, or, hey, let's look at our footwork here, or let's look at what we're thinking about here. Something else maybe reared its head a little bit. But I think you just see a calmness and a understanding every day of exactly what he needs to do. And I think that's the piece that experience brings you that is hard to have until you actually play.
The experience hard to have until you actually play. The other thing I think that is massive for Garrett Nussmeier this year, his family shared a photo of his graduation. And yes, graduating is a great accomplishment. I'm not minimizing that, but I'm going to go a little different direction. What's so significant is that with that graduation, Garrett Nussmeier now can take a minimal class load this fall and still be eligible to play and effectively be a full-time football player. And I know some of you are going to roll your eyes and say they're still student athletes and schools should matter, and I get all that, and that's fine. Let's be real. When we look back at the last three quarterbacks who had immense success at LSU, Zach Mettenberger, Joe Burrow, Jaden Daniels, all three of them had this in common. And I could tell you stories about each of them. I will. I'll tell you stories about each of them. In 2013, Zach Mettenberger had one online class he was taking in that final semester in fall of 2013. Met would show up to football ops every day with his flip-flops, his venti Starbucks, and he and Cam Cameron would sit there and watch film all day. Joe Burrow was sort of famously taking just a few online classes. He was the first one in the building every single day. Joe Burrow has often said, when asked about Ohio State and LSU, he says, I went to school at Ohio State, played football at LSU. I'm good with it. We got the better of the deal. Jaden Daniels in the fall of 2023, and this was captured on the Amazon documentary. They had to give him his own key card so he could have building access before anybody else was there when it was still dark. And LSU had that virtual reality system that we've talked about. You've seen a lot written about it and talked about it now, where in the ready room that LSU has, and I've been in football ops a million times, we go there for press conferences, and when you walk to the team room for the press conference, you walk by that sort of ready room. And it's a rectangular shaped room where you could stand and look at a screen, put on VR goggles, and line up and basically get mental reps like you're playing a game. And Jaden Daniels did that over and over and over again. Those guys weren't full-time students. They were professional football players in college. And Garrett Nussmeier now, as a graduate in a fifth year, is a professional football player playing in college. And all the things Joe Sloan just said are only going to benefit him the way it did the other guys that I just mentioned. Now, I want to circle back to the thing we talked about a bit ago as well, which was when Sloan mentioned speed, misdirections, and formation. We'll get to that as we wrap up. Locked in LSU, your team every day. So I want to make sure that we touch on the running game as well, because LSU last year averaged 30 points a game. In 2023, when they were the number one offense and number one scoring offense in the country, averaged 45 points per game. If you're an everydayer and you were with us a year ago, you might remember, shout out to our everydayers, you might remember my contention a year ago was LSU was the number one offense in the country. I said this so many times, I got it memorized. You lose Mike Denbrock, you lose Jaden Daniels, you lose Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas. That offense is going to regress. It's not going to be awful. It's just not going to be the best offense in the country. Defensively, in 2023, LSU was literally statistically the worst defense in the history of the program. They're not going to be that. They're bringing Blake Baker. They stabilized some things. It's going to be better, but how much better? That gap is going to determine how good LSU is. And ultimately, they ended up an 8-4 football team. The offense averaged 15 points per game less. The defense went from the hundreds to top 60, like 59 nationally. Okay? You weren't the worst ever, but you were right in the middle of the pack nationally. Certainly not good enough to win without an elite offense. If you had that defense with the 2023 offense, you're a playoff team, maybe the national champion. Well, as we look at it, now going into this season, the question is, okay, you averaged 30 a game last year. I don't think you're going to get to 45, which you were 2 years ago, but how much closer can you get? Can that close the gap? Think about it. You close that gap, you beat USC last year. You close that gap, you win on the road at Texas A&M last year. Some of the games that you struggled with, now Alabama was a whitewashing, but that was an outlier relative to the rest of your season. What else does it take? That's kind of the thing we look at right now and go, how do you close that gap? Well, a big part of it is running the football. LSU a year ago couldn't run the ball. They were in the triple digits nationally in rushing offense. They were dead last in the SEC in rushing offense. Les Miles would have a coronary. But, you look at it, the first drive of the season, LSU goes right down the field against USC out in Las Vegas. It's in my mind's eye. I can see it right now. And you stall out inside the 5. Those are the types of things where you finish those drives and you win some of those games. Well, a big part of it is Caden Durham. And Caden Durham going year 1 to year 2 is a massive part of this offense, as Joe Sloan said.
What Caden was able to do last year, for just maybe the public, you would just see, okay, Caden's a freshman, and you watch him and you go, oh, wow, he's doing such great things for a freshman, for a true freshman. But I would add this. He didn't get here until the summer. And what he was able to do and pick up in the summer, carry over, I think it speaks to really, one, the program he came from, but how he handles himself mentally and how he carries himself, his maturity. But for a true freshman in the SEC to go out and play the way he did and play through some of the different injuries he was dealing with, he was pretty dynamic. So I can't wait for him to be able to stay healthy throughout the year, and what type of runner he can be week in, week out when he's feeling a little bit better.
Remember, he played with a couple of dislocated toes throughout half of that season, suffered those against South Alabama. So he had a steel plate in his cleat to keep his foot flat so he could play on that. That had to be miserable and painful, and he was still a freshman All-SEC player. How much better can he be? Well, Caden Durham getting better year 1 to year 2 is only going to make you more effective at the goal line and in the red zone. So too will things like misdirection and formation. That's the challenge Joe Sloan is going to have. When you return Aaron Anderson and Xavier Thomas and Chris Hilton, and you add Nick Anderson and Barrion Brown, and you've still got Trey'Dez Green, and you add Bauer Sharp and Donovan Green, and you look around and you've got Caden Durham, and you add 5-star running back Harlan Berry, how do you get all of those guys touches? That is the giant conundrum that Joe Sloan is going to have to deal with. Now, it's a good problem to have. It's like you look at this giant bin of toys and you go, how I'll play with all these in one day. That's what Joe Sloan's got to figure out. That's a good challenge. It beats the alternative. But it is a different kind of challenge. And one of the things Joe showed us in the spring game, spring scrimmage, whatever you want to call it, that open practice that they had in Tiger Stadium, they ran a goal line situation. We talked about it. I ran it through play for play for you here. 4 different plays from the goal line, 4 different formations. They scored on 3 of the 4 plays, including one where Juwan Johnson went in at quarterback. They motioned Nussmeier out to the left flat, and Juwan Johnson carried the ball and went into the end zone. I mean, those are the type. We saw one where there was a 4 tight end set. Trey'Dez Green, Bauer Sharp, Donovan Green, and they put a tight end jersey on Bo Bordelon and made him an extra tight end. 4 tight end set. I mean, Joe Sloan was in his bag, and he's going to have to be this year to make all of this work because you've got the best quarterback room in the country. You're not necessarily going to be the number 1 offense in the country like you were 2 years ago, but you're going to be a lot better than 30 points per game, which was 47th in scoring. Can you go from 30 points per game to 35, 37 points per game? If the answer is yes, then all of a sudden you're 8-4, very quickly becomes 10-2, 11-1. You're a college football playoff team. And then it's all about your draw and getting hot at the right time. See if they can do it. But the first glimmer nationally of people paying attention, my hat tip to Pro Football Focus and hammer the over 8.5. Okay, that's going to do it for us here on today's episode of Locked on LSU, your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. Now for your second listen, how about you check out the Portal Show? Brian Smith has the latest rumors, portal entries, and signings. Be the most informed fan on the rapid changes of the college football landscape. Find The Portal on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Speaking of, if you're on podcast, please subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Rate us, leave a review. If you're on YouTube, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video. And let a friend know if they love the Tigers. We got you every single day for Locked on LSU, your team every day.